A stunning twist changes Critical Role Campaign 3 forever. George R.R. Martin praises a new Game of Thrones spinoff just days after ripping House of the Dragon, and is a 2024 player's handbook trying to kill Astarion?
Oh no, not again.
Today we talk about a stunning twist on Critical Role, the return of some beloved classes to Pathfinder 2 Remastered, and is Astarion from Baldur's Gate 3 in some serious danger? Why not take a second to hit those like and subscribe buttons so we can keep bringing you these daily fantasy and TTRPG updates? And then let's dive into the news.
Ready? Let's go!
Critical Role Campaign 3 just changed everything, as a massive surprise has totally shifted the endgame for Bell's Hells. While a lot of Critical Role fans were expecting a character death after finding out that last night's episode was going to go nearly 3.5 hours before the break, and with Sam and other cast members teasing a huge event in the episode. But it turns out the combat wasn't the challenge at all. While originally it seemed like the party facing down a Ludinous snow clone, the Sorrow Lord, and his Fey Dragon could be a potentially deadly encounter, in reality it wound up being frankly underwhelming. The snow clone of Ludinous was dispatched without getting a single spell off, and Gloamgut turned out to be a surprisingly weak creature for this level, with a breath weapon that could barely do 30 damage on a failed save. But no one was more underwhelming than the so-called Sorrow Lord. The Sorrow Lord had no legendary resistances, no real defenses, and barely any offense. So after he revealed that the top of the Unseelie Court already knew about Ludinous' experiments and plans, and was simply going to betray Ludinous at the last second to unleash Predathos themselves, he basically spent the entire second combat being incapacitated by psychic lances from Imogen. He literally managed to get off one round of attacks in both combats combined, doing about 20 damage for the whole thing before just getting utterly annihilated.
Is it bad if I kill your dad?
Not asking the question now, you're disintegrating somebody.
The huge twist came after the combat, as the collapsing temple, which seemed to swallow up Imogen, Breas, and the unconscious Shadow Lord, suddenly rebuilt itself as the Archheart made his presence known, pulling the party into his godly realm, and revealing a proposal that completely changes the endgame for Bell's Hells. Matt Mercer left the DM chair so that Abu Bakar Salim, who played Corlin the Archheart in Exandria Downfall, made a stunning return to play his role and reveal his secret to the Hells. It turns out the Archheart wants the Hells to become the vessel of Predathos to force his fellow gods to flee the God Eater and abandon Exandria for good. Corlin said that he had another god on board with his plan.
It's Ludinous because he's a god!
Surprise!
And that by freeing Predathos but briefly containing him as the vessel, the gods would lose every advantage they had and be forced to use that opportunity to flee for their lives, leaving the mortals of Exandria free to finally live for themselves and grow without the aid of the gods. He also claimed that Predathos has literally no interest in hurting the mortals, saying he would simply chase the gods wherever they went. Basically, the Archheart said this was the only way to force the gods to let go and give the mortals the chance to determine their own fates and grow on their own. And he also claimed that if they did not do this and simply kept Predathos caged or unleashed him without a vessel, it would bring about another calamity and untold devastation. So Bell's Hells now have to choose between possibly sacrificing one of their own as the vessel of Predathos to prevent a calamity, or leading the Exandrian forces into a potential slaughter, as the Unseelie Court seems determined to unleash Predathos and fight against them, triggering yet another calamity as the gods feel forced to intervene once more. Either way, the endgame for Campaign 3 and the future of Exandria just changed forever, and the episode even ended with the Raven Queen reaching out to Laudna, possibly to offer even more horrific Sophie's choices to alter the fate of the world one more time.
A mask, black feathers, and then a whisper. Come find me.
Is the Dungeons & Dragons 2024 Player's Handbook trying to kill Astarion? A piece of artwork in the Player's Handbook appears to show everyone's favorite vampire rogue in danger of being annihilated by a daylight spell from a powerful cleric. In an article by Christian Hoffer on InWorld, link in the description, the artist behind the piece confirms that it is in fact Astarion in his artwork, as Astarion the character belongs to Wizards of the Coast, not Larian Studios. And while the vampires all around him are bursting into flame from the daylight spell, Astarion is actually not harmed thanks to his temporary sunlight immunity from the Illithid tadpole inside of him. Although it does seem like the vampire is about to be the only one left facing down this powerful cleric. While this leaves the fate of Astarion ambiguous, it's another clear indicator that Wizards of the Coast is not done with the characters of Baldur's Gate 3, even if Larian Studios is done working with Dungeons & Dragons, and is claiming ownership of these characters in a lot of their upcoming works.
My, this place is fun.
Speaking of Baldur's Gate, WizKids has announced a new board game set in the iconic Forgotten Realms city, as Dungeons & Dragons Builders of Baldur's Gate was just announced. In the new board game, players will compete to build up the city and gain control of the districts and the factions running Baldur's Gate, and occasionally be forced to work together to fend off monster attacks on the city walls and harbors. Players will control one of the powerful families fighting for control of Baldur's Gate and try to build influence by creating new businesses and fending off those monster attacks until they finally seize control of Baldur's Gate. The game, which is designed by Matthew Dunstan, will be available summer of next year and will be the first non-dungeon crawl board game WizKids has made for Dungeons & Dragons.
It's about damn time.
George R.R. Martin made waves last week when he ripped into House of the Dragon Season 2 for making disappointing changes to his source material in the latest season. But now the Game of Thrones creator has nothing but praise for a different Game of Thrones spin-off, A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, saying, quote, "I visited the set in Northern Ireland in July and I loved what I saw. Great cast. Dunk and Egg, the lead characters from the book, look as if they walked out of the pages of my book. My readers are going to love them. I certainly do. Showrunner Ira Parker is doing a great job." This has to be a huge relief for Thrones fans after his comments on House of the Dragon just a few days ago, and they won't have to wait long to see for themselves just how good A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is, as the show apparently finished filming this week and is scheduled for release sometime in 2025.
But I want it now!
And finally, Pathfinder is bringing back some much-loved classes as new archetypes in Pathfinder 2 Remastered. Earlier this week, Paizo announced that their upcoming War of the Immortals book will be full of new player options, including the return of some fan-favorite classes as archetypes in the new book. Archetypes are basically the ClassFinder version of subclasses, fundamentally altering the class they belong to. This means Avengers are now back, becoming a rogue archetype that turns the class into an instrument of divine retribution, allowing them to hunt their god's prey and use the favored weapon of their deity for surprise attacks. So prepare to see a bunch of two-handed swords and battle axe surprise attacks in your future. Also returning as archetypes are the Blood Rager, which combines barbarians and sorcerers, which is now a barbarian subclass that gives you access to spells, bleed damage when you rage, and the ability to heal by drinking the blood of your enemies. And the new Vindicator Ranger archetype is just the reskinned Inquisitor from the original Pathfinder, who wields divine powers and expanded spell lists to hunt down and mark their enemies. And those are just 3 of the many options the War of the Immortals book will add for Pathfinder Remastered players when it drops in just a few months. So that's all we have this week on Fantasy News Friday. How do you think Bell's Hells will handle the massive choice that has been left to them? And which option do you think they will choose? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to hit those like and subscribe buttons.